So this pen, which is a fountain pen, goes like this and hovers there. Pretty cool. Okay, stop. This video is sponsored by FlexiSpot, and we have some cool pens to look at here today, including this hovering fountain pen sent to me by Hoverpen. They're doing a Kickstarter for this right now. This is their Hoverpen 3.0. I don't know what their 1.0 look like, but they also sent their 2.0 to me. Also hovers in a similar way. We've all played with magnets before, I think, and this basically there's a magnet in the pen, and you can leave the cap on the rim, I think, and then there's magnets in the rim of the stand, and then a magnet here, and it's a basic weird magnetized principle of magnets attracting or pulsing, which makes it so the pen can sit there hovering magically and in a weird space age way. And I feel like there is something here. In the future, I hope that pens do just kind of float, waiting to be picked up like this. It's so old-fashioned to have to be able to have to pick up pens off the table. It's so much work, but to be able to just do this, right? Now, see, you can see there are a few little problems here where the pens try to stick to the frame. So you have to, you get used to it after a while. You know that there's a certain angle of approach here which works best. If I come in from this angle here, but for example, it can easily kind of get stuck to the frame, or if I bump it, okay, it's doing pretty good, but you can see it gets out of control quickly. So it's definitely going in a very cool direction, and this one spins too, which is very cool. They all spin. It's awesome. I love it. This one here is a pre-production sample. Like I think they said this one is handmade. And then when the Kickstarter finishes, they'll start pumping them out through the production line. And it just feels very cool. I love the concept. It's still a pen. It's still a fountain pen. And they do something different with it. The only thing I'm worried about is maybe that I usually don't store my fountain pens with the tip pointing up like this. Does anyone else think that might be a problem? Because then I feel like over time the ink might drain out of the tip. But other than that, I'm very happy with it. It feels cool. It's fun. It's just a cool thing to have on your desk. A lot of people get pens just for having them on their desks. That's not the proudest part of pen ownership, but it's a very common part of pen ownership. A lot of people get pens just to play with them. They're fun to hold, fiddle with, and this is a very cool way to play and fiddle with a pen. So these are very strong in those departments, but we will also be drawing with this one. I have to draw with a magical hovering pen because we all know magnets are magic. So let's give it a shot. I'll give this one a few scribbles too, just because we have it. They say maybe you're supposed to maybe do this, use the magnetization of the rim to pull the cap off and then push it back on there. And I don't know. They all feel very solid and good though. No qualms about the construction. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's definitely a lot of space age futuristic inspirations there. And after we look at my new desk that I've got from FlexiSpot, we're going to look at a couple more little cool and interesting pens. All right, here we are at my new Canna Pro bamboo standing desk by FlexiSpot, and this is where it goes down and up. Thanks to the dual electric motor system, I can use the little panel on the side to lift the desktop up or down for both a sitting or standing position. Plus, it also has 4 memory presets for different heights. I'm just using 2 of them at the moment, standing and sitting. And you can just press the up and down arrows for fine-tune adjustments. I easily assembled it here at home with some very basic tools, and it feels very solid, even with my whole computer and 3 monitors and speakers and all this other stuff here up on top of it. Even at the fully extended standing position, it doesn't wobble or shake. I can even lean on it, so I'm very happy with it. Personally, I find that I work and think better on my feet sometimes, plus it helps to get the blood flowing in my body a little bit better, so click the link in the description. Thank you, FlexiSpot, for sending this desk. Now here's a cool pen. This one is from Crush Metric. A couple people on Instagram messaged me about this one, showing this to me. I was like, yeah. So it looks pretty normal. There's a clip on the back, tip at the front, and it says Crush Metric here. But you notice there's also a little lever here at the top, which is where the fun starts. Check this out as I move it forward. Oh yeah. Now that's satisfying. It makes the ballpoint come out at the front. And also, of course, all this all this fun texture here. Isn't that amazing? And so this is a great fidget pen just because it's so fun to do this with the lever. And you can do it fast or you can do it slow and watch it happen gradually as the little triangles appear. It's extremely satisfying. And I don't think this pen was very expensive either, which is good because it's just a piece of plastic with some metal, and I feel like those shapes are in there, and then it just, pulling this lever pulls these two parts together, because you can push it together like this without using the lever also. And just kind of crushes the metal down onto the shapes. I actually hadn't tried that until just now. That's a very fun little pen. A little bit different than anything else I'd seen before, so. Give that a look if you want a fun little fidget pen to have on your desk. As you can see, it still has the protective red nib on the little protective thing on the end of the nib there. So I haven't even drawn with this pen, but I've gotten a lot of good fun and use out of it. It's brought me a lot of pleasure. So thank you for the people who suggested this to me. I love this pen and I haven't even drawn with it. Sometimes that's how it goes. All right, and then finally, before we get to drawing, I have this pen, which looks wonderful. I bought it on Kickstarter. This is the Drillog. I think it's supposed to be a combination of the words drill and dialogue pen. I bought it on Kickstarter and I love how it looks, but it was ultimately a bit of a disappointment to me. But look how beautiful it is. This here, it says Drillog. It really bothers me to say that word because I can't really figure it out. But look how beautiful. It's supposed to be like a machine tip dip pen. The tip comes out, if you'd like to do that. There you go. And I bought it on Kickstarter a long time ago. You might have already seen some reviews of this on other pen channels, but basically what happened was it was working so good for me at first, but then maybe, I don't know, like an hour into using it, I drew some picture with it, which I don't have anymore, but it just kind of stopped working. I don't know. I mean, the tip still looks like it's in good shape. And I tried like 12 different types of ink with it, okay? And I tried washing it in lots of different ways. It looks a little bit dirty right now, maybe because of the last type of ink I used with it. But it just really stopped working for me. I don't know if there is some sort of microscopic damage to the tip, but I don't feel like I did anything unreasonable to this pen. But it really just stopped working. Like the ink stopped flowing. It stopped being able to draw more than like 1 centimeter of a line with a full load of ink in it. Or at first it was working pretty good. But I still love this pen just because it looks so beautiful. I love the machining and it looks like such a cool kind of alien medical device, like the precision of it. So I was really saddened that it didn't perform better for me because it was working good at first and then it stopped. I'm willing to take some of Like sometimes I do the wrong things with these pens, but this one, I feel like I didn't do anything wrong, but maybe I did. I don't know. Anyways, so I have mixed feelings about this. Love it. Feel like there's a lot of potential there. Maybe some other people got this from Kickstarter and it worked really good for them. I'd love to hear about that, but maybe I just got like a dud, or maybe I did break it, but I don't know. Anyways, very cool pen. As you can see, it's gorgeous. I got the blue. You could choose different colors on the Kickstarter. We'll see. Who knows? Anyways, let's get back to this, the Hoverpen 3.0. Da, 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 da. Space Age Fountain Pen. At first, I didn't realize you had to come in kind of from this angle, place it in like this, because I was trying to place it in like this, but then all the magnets try pulling on it, and it's easy to get it stuck to the side like this. And it actually starts chipping the paint a little bit. So you kind of have to learn what angle to come in to put it in there, right, into the cradle, right? But once you kind of get used to it, it goes really well. Sometimes it wobbles a little bit. You can just kind of stop it. Or sometimes, the wobble's nice. Kind of reminds you that it is hovering there. Right, let's draw. I've already loaded it up. It works really good. As you can see, here's my test, Hoverpen 3.0. It's a Schmidt Iridium nib they have in there. You can get these in ballpoint nibs too. I asked for the fountain pen variant, of course. Let's try out this Hoverpen 2.0, see how this ballpoint works. It's very, I don't know, feels like a ballpoint pen. So nothing too crazy there. I mean, that's the thing about ballpoint pens. They pretty much all just feel the same. That's the fun thing about fountain pens is sometimes, there's a lot more character and variety there with them. So, all right, let's hop into it. What will I draw today? Oh, I wonder if I never thought about it. I could put it here without the cap on there too. Oh, actually, no. It doesn't work without the cap on there. Like the balance is off or something. That's interesting. You have to have the cap on there. Then it works perfectly. Unfortunately, the pen doesn't hover while you draw, but that's okay. It worked very well. The lines were satisfying. And I put them in my sketchbook with some of my other lines. Now, I'll tell you, recently I read this book about Shackleton. Ernest Shackleton, I think his name was. I don't remember who wrote it or what the book was called. Probably The Endurance. I think that was the name of his ship. And you might have heard of this before. It happened over 100 years ago, so many of you may have read the book or heard about it. There have probably been several books. I think a lot of the crew members wrote books themselves. But I actually listened to it while I was walking on audiobook. And it was very interesting for a number of reasons. First, I'll give you a very quick, no notes summary of this story. It's a completely true story, and spoiler alert, but like I said, it happened over 100 years ago, so you probably have heard of it already, even if you forgot about it. Basically, there was once upon a time, this guy named Ernest Shackleton, he liked going on adventures, okay? It was 1914-ish, I think, 1914. They set off, or they got this really nice, sturdy wooden ship called the Endurance, and they set off with a crew. In fact, they were about to set off, and then World War I broke out, and they were like, Admiralty, hello, should we still go? We've been planning for years, but we, of course, want to offer our ship to the country. And then the Admiralty, Churchill, or whoever, just, I don't know if Churchill was alive then. Someone was just like, just go, guys, just go. And so they went. Also, there was another ship on the other side of, the goal here was to go to Antarctica, which is at the South Pole, and trek across it. Because no one had done that yet. There had been someone that beat Shackleton to going to the South Pole, all right? That had happened already, and so that fueled his, he's like, someone already went to the South Pole, but I will be the first one to walk across the continent. That was his goal. So he even had another ship that went, it was like a whole other part of the book barely discusses what happened to this ship. They went to the other side of the continent and they hiked into the South Pole and then hiked back out, leaving little trails of like food and resource piles so that when people had hiked in, as they were hiking out, they would have all these resources without having to carry as much with them. Anyways, their story isn't really about that. The people on the Endurance, there were like 28 men or something, a bunch of dogs. It was this very strong whaling ship that they got made specially in Norway, intended for Arctic whaling, which was very, very popular at the time, but also waning in popularity and becoming almost not popular at all. And so this Norwegian shipyard was like, this might be the last ship of this kind that we're ever going to make. Let's make it the best one ever. And so they made this super beefy ship, super thick hulls out of the hardest woods possible. Everything about it was super sturdy. And apparently this made it so it was very, not very pleasant to ride on as it went across the Atlantic Ocean on its maiden voyage. Anyways, this is not a very quick summary I'm giving here. So it was like 1914, and they went down into a little sea and kind of cozied up in Antarctica called the Weddell Sea. And this is where things got a little bit dicey because this is where the water started to have a lot of ice in it. So they started to weave their way about carefully through ice floes, trying to get to land. And eventually their ship got stuck, then it got unstuck, then it got stuck again. And eventually it just got really, really stuck. And they were there for like months and months, just kind of living off the ship as it was stuck in the ice. And then eventually their ship started to get crushed by the ice. So then they started living on the ice. And pretty much all they had to live off at this point was all the supplies they brought with them. And eventually the ship completely got crushed and sank with a lot of their supplies. They weren't able to rescue all of them. So they were, for a long time, they were just eating like seals and penguins and the occasional big sea lion, stuff like that. And eventually they did eat a few of their dogs too, I think, because they had sled dogs. But after their ship sank, the dogs were more of just like a resource drain than a help for anything, because they were just here's one of the most interesting things I found about weighing all the different things that made them men happy, made them men sad, made them feel like they were suffering or doing well. The thing that seemed to make them feel like they were suffering the most wasn't the cold, wasn't going to bed every night in a freezing, soggy sleeping bag on the ice with the blizzard and the wind all around them. It was the long stretches of boredom, right? It seemed like as long as they felt like they had some sort of goal and something to wake up and do every day, they were pretty happy and content. And they wrote this kind of thing in their journals, that they were like, hey, this is a pretty decent life. I like it out here. Even though they were just pretty much living on a piece of ice for months and months, as long as they were like being able to, they had a few of the lifeboats from the ship and they were like working on those, repairing this, repairing that. But as soon as they ran out of things to do, they were like, this is the worst thing ever. So I think that's a kind of interesting reflection on humanity there, the way the human brain works. Anyways, I was reading this book, and one of the main downsides of listening to it on audiobook is that they would make a lot of references to like they floated up towards this way, they were trying to go towards this island, they gave a lot of coordinates, and I wanted to look at a map. So every now and then I would pull up a map on my phone. But it was also one of those things where I was a little bit scared to Google something like Shackleton expedition map or trail or what. The author did a very good job of not spoiling the ending. And I hadn't read about this recently enough to know the ending. Like, obviously I knew that like some of these men's diaries must have survived, because he was making quotes from a lot of their diaries. So I was like, hey, at the very worst, every single one of them could have died and they just found a bunch of their diaries in a box. At the very best, they all survived. I don't really know what happened, so I didn't want to look it up and then see in a Wikipedia article or something like, and they all survived. It turns out, spoiler, they all survived, which is amazing. But I didn't know that as I was watching. It's kind of like, have you ever watched like a competition game show where people get eliminated every week, but you're a few weeks behind or even years behind, right? And you find there's like some interesting character on there, but you can't look up that person's Instagram, or you can't Google that season of the show because you know that the person's Instagram will probably be like, made it to the final 8. It says that on their Instagram account. So you just got to keep wondering about them. It'll spoil it for yourself if you look anything up about them. That's kind of where I was at with the Shackleton story. Anyways, I don't remember what else I was saying, but it was interesting. I liked it. And yeah, I was surprised that nowhere in this story was hypothermia mentioned. I thought they would have huge problems with hypothermia, but I guess I don't really know what hypothermia is. I Googled it. Turns out it's like when your body temperature goes below freezing. Guess that's bad. They did struggle with frostburn. No, frostbite. Some people had I think one guy lost a leg. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy story. I'd recommend it to anyone, but of course I did ruin it a little bit by telling you that they all survived. I think I enjoyed it a little bit more not knowing that they all survived, but that does add to its kind of general amazingness, I suppose. And then afterwards, after I finished it, it was very cool to Google, because now, if you Google some of the islands they went to, for a long time they were stuck on this tiny little island in the Antarctic Sea, tiny little island called Elephant Island, where it was pretty much just like a piece of rock jutting out of the frigid, icy waters, where there were some seals and penguins and just ice around them, right? And I think they were probably the first people to ever touch it. But now if you Google it, there's tons of pictures of it, of people going by on ships. I don't know in what situation people would go by on ships, maybe scientific or fishing vessels. There's Google 360-degree photospheres of it, but it's just cool to be able to look and be like, hey, that's where these people were. And I've had experiences like that in the past of books I've read, even fictional books. I read this series by, I think his name's Chichen Liu. It's called the Three Body Problem. Great series. It's science fiction. I don't read a lot of fiction books, even though I should. I need to let myself relax a little bit and read some fiction books. But this series was amazing. I don't want to spoil it too much, but at one point they did reference some actual, these were up in Norway. I think they were just obscure little islands that the author must have just looked up on Google Map and kept on zooming in on little islands up in the coastline or something. I don't remember. But then I looked them up and found them, and it was little real life Easter eggs. First of all, it was cool to see them in real life, what the author was referencing, but also people had left reviews on the islands, 5 stars and little references to this book. It felt like little inside jokes. It's just cool. Yeah, it's cool to see it in real life. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Yes. Goodbye.